All right, Raymond. So we've spoken about this. The big picture is really the problem of this climate bill from Biden. But now we really need to drill down a little bit deeper. In the article, you write that to seriously deal with climate change, you would have to put the fossil fuel companies out of business, seize their assets, and leave most of the fossil fuel in the ground. And for that to happen, for society to interact with nature in a sustainable way, you need a revolution to overthrow this system, end quote. Well, why is it that you can't make the necessary changes under this system? Why can't we put the fossil fuel companies out of business, seize their assets under this system?
Yeah. Look, there are a number of factors here. The most important is what we've been talking about through the course of this interview, Andy, and that is that fossil fuels are foundational to the profitable functioning of this capitalist imperialist system. Did it have to be that way? No. But this is how it has evolved. And what that means is that there's huge amounts of investment capital that are tied up, in pipeline, in infrastructure, the transport, in the ways in which the whole industrial grid and agriculture with the use of petrochemical fertilizers. And the way it works under capitalism is that you don't just write that off. We're talking about billions and billions, in the fossil fuel industry alone. That investment has to be recouped. And you have bank loans, profit earning, yielding bank loans. All of this that has been sunk into not just the fossil fuel industry, but the whole way in which this economy and society are structured. And if you kind of say, oh, we're going to kind of say no to this, we're going to pull the plug on it, that would unleash an economic earthquake in terms of the functioning of this system. Second, as we talked about, the fossil fuel is essential to the strategic military functioning of this system. In other words, the whole enforcement structure, the military machine, the fleets, the bombs, the whole way in which this global system is enforced, that is U.S. imperialism, dominant position, that relies on a military, that is fueled by fossil fuel. And you have something else, a political reality. And that is you have a section of the ruling class, the Republic fascists, who are the climate deniers, who are not going to be well disposed, to pulling the plug, on fossil fuel. So, these are, underlying factors, that tell you that there is no way that there's going to be an order. Remember, we started this interview off with the discussion of mandates. There's no mandate to stop fracking. There's no mandate, to dismantle, the oil pipelines. There's no mandate to say, well, we're not going to have a military that straddles the globe, that consumes oil this way. So this is all a way of saying that it is foundational to the profitable economic functioning, the supply chains, that exist in the third world, the sweatshops, the ships that transport these goods. All of this is wrapped up in fossil fuel.
As people are been conditioned to think in this society today, you couldn't even win people to do this because, first off, this you were describing this whole military machine, and people expect to have inexpensive goods. And you were saying earlier in a previous section of this interview that this global supply chain runs on these super tankers that are a tremendous amount of people want cheap goods. They want stuff. They get outraged when prices go up just a little bit. Panic sets in. People have their private cars, and people believe that America are the good guys and should, be able to do whatever they want to the rest of the world as long as we have a good life here. Or in a more dominant way, they don't even think about their relationship to the rest of the world. So there's a whole ideological component that would have to be that you would need is in order for people to even to support the kinds of thing you're saying that the bourgeoisie, the capitalist class, would never do, which is basically, you're saying, shut down the oil industry and the defense, the U.S. military. That undermines the whole kettle of fish. And maybe we can come at it more by getting into this second question.
Andy, I just want to say that, the point you're making is a very important one. The whole so-called consumer society that exists in the U.S. is both a source of profit and super profit. When you see that the Walmart price, for instance, that people count on, is premised on, savage exploitation of people throughout the world. And then the transport of those goods, requires fossil fuel. So you have a situation in this economy and society where there's almost 2 cars per household. And there's been a statistic that if the rest of the world were to have the same standard of living as the United States, you would need 5 Earths of resources and materials to sustain that. So this is unsustainable. But as you said, people don't think in these terms because it's whoever has the most toys at the end of the day. This is the ethos that is drilled into people, that there has to be a new model of an iPhone in order for me to be a full human being. This is the mindset, that exists. And what underlies that is everything that we've been talking about. A system of exploitation, and fossil fuels is very much, at the font of that.
So this is important that this sort of me culture, this rampant and parasitic individualism in this country is tied to the system that's all tied in with this kind of environment. And it runs counter to what most people on another part of their thinking would like to see, where the earth continues, where there is a diversity of species. But this connection means we have a lot of struggle to wage with people. I'd like, though, to move to how would a revolutionary society be able to go about working to solve this?
Yeah, well, look, the first thing is a revolutionary society would put an end to a situation where you have these large, mega corporations, that are ruling the economy and are making the investment decisions based on what's profitable. So what's happening in a new liberatory socialist society is that you are able, because you have socialist ownership of the resources of society, the technological capacities of society, you have the ability now to rationally plan, what is needed for the betterment of society and humanity. We need more housing. We need health care. We need a different kind of energy grid. And you go to work on that, and you have the ability to do it. Look, here's what happens under the current system. You have these scientists, for instance, who have issued these alarms about global warming, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. These scientists are not just telling us, what time it is in terms of this crisis. They're also telling us what needs to be done now, urgently, in terms of the transport system, in terms of energy, in terms of how we live and how we commute. Those scientists are cooperating with each other on a global scale, but they can only go so far. The climate change report was reviewed, vetted by members of the fossil fuel industry. That's how obscene this is. You have people, right, who have all kinds of incredible proposals that are actionable, to transform our energy system, the existing energy system here and in other parts of the world rapidly to renewable, to solar, to geothermal, to wind. But this goes nowhere under the system. These proposals go nowhere because they have to be profitable. They have to be mediated by banks that gather up the investment capital. They have to show immediate return. So you have people, scientists, engineers with proposals that go nowhere. You have people in all walks of life whose creativity, whose determination goes nowhere. They're locked out of any kind of meaningful solution to these problems. Look, people may watch the show, Shark Tank, where they have entrepreneurs, right? And, one of the first questions they ask people with an idea, most of the ideas are not very, bold or visionary, and they're not dealing with environmental issues, but some of them do. But one of the first questions they ask them is, do you have a patent?
Do you have a patent on this?
Anything proprietary about it? Do you have a patent?
Jeff, is it patented?
Do you have a way to monetize that idea? But under socialism, these ideas become the common property. They're not a source of private profit and advancement. So you can go to work on these problems, and you go to work on these problems, with a global perspective, that this is for the interest and the betterment of humanity and the protection of the planet. And the Constitution of the new socialist republic in North America, has made this integral and central to what a new economy would look like. We proceed from the interest of world humanity, the resources, the technology, the know-how. This is to serve the betterment of humanity, the advance of revolution throughout the world, and the protection of the environment. And you're going to challenge people in the new society to see their relationship to each other and to nature in a qualitatively different way. That we are a planet that is facing this existential peril. And we have a responsibility to become caretakers of this planet. And now you can work on these problems in a way that gives you a chance. And I do want to make this point. There's no guarantee that we can save the planet, but this is our only chance to do it. And Bob Avakian has carved out, a strategy for making this revolution, and he has analyzed why we are in a rare time when this revolution becomes more possible because of a ruling class that's at war with itself, and a huge possibility is opening up, Andy, for us to make revolution in the country that is the greatest source of the carbon emissions in the atmosphere.
Raymond, I'd like some of your thoughts about how this environmental crisis is impacting in and feeding into and could be part of the conditions by which a revolutionary people in a revolutionary situation could be forged.
Andy, we started early in the interview about, what is the state of the planet right now? I have a phrase, the foreboding summer of 2022. And we are seeing record droughts throughout the world. We're seeing wildfires, in California. We're seeing, flooding on a scale unseen before. And as I mentioned, you have a situation right now in the world where over 100 million people are refugees, forced to evacuate their homes. And hundreds of millions more people will be in that situation as this climate crisis intensifies. And what we've been getting at here is that this climate act is not simply inadequate, but it is part of the problem, not part of the solution. It is prolonging this dependency on oil. And it is not a program for a transition to a green economy. It is not a program to collaborate and unite with the people of the world. And yet people are experiencing all of the effects of a global, a planetary environmental crisis that is threatening the very ecosystems that make life possible on this planet. And if people can wrestle with the kinds of ideas that we're putting forth here, the analysis of why the Biden plan is not a plan to rescue this planet. And if people can wrestle with the fact that there is an alternative to this, what Bob Avakian has charted out, especially in this Constitution for a new socialist republic in North America. People see the Democrats, they see the Republican fascists, but they don't see in the main right now that there is an actual viable visionary alternative to this that gives us the chance, not the guarantee, to go to work on this crisis. And if people are wrestling with this, if people are being challenged by this, if people are engaging with the new interview with Bob Avakian from earlier this year, if people are going to that Constitution and looking at the episodes on this show, see that there is an actual alternative, then that can become a profound mood changer in a time when people are lapsing into all of this, grabbing hold of false hope on the one hand and hopelessness on the other. And I do think that maybe my message here is what Bob Avakian has called hope on a scientific basis. And that hope on a scientific basis actually is expressed and embodied in this Constitution for a new socialist republic, the principles of socialist sustainable development. This can make an enormous difference on bringing forward a revolutionary people in a time of accelerating and cascading climate crisis.
Okay, Raymond, it's been good to have you on the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. The interview over these last weeks is really a real contribution to people being able to understand what the problem we face is and what is the solution. So I look forward to seeing you again. Thanks for being on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I always enjoy it, and I look forward to more discussions.
Great.